What makes a video game a masterpiece? You can probably imagine a painting or movie you consider classic or defining its medium, but what about a video game? How do we go about chronicling the definitive landmarks in video games when the medium itself is based on interactive experiences rather than simply absorbing content? If you ask me, a video game goes from being great to something profound by elevating itself above the modern standards of simply having artful graphics, enjoyable music, and engaging gameplay and narrative. Truly great games find a way to hard code emotion into their core, transforming gameplay into an indescribable experience. Games of this caliber are few and far between. Though rare, when we do have the privilege of discovering them, these games have the potential to expand our horizons, rewrite our outlook on life, and become ingrained into our very personalities. There's something to be said for just how powerful a video game experience can be when compared to other mediums. Books lack visuals, comics lack temporal stimulation, and movies lack something crucial only video games have: direct human interaction. While playing a video game, you have immediate control over the actions, decisions, and outcomes of the on-screen characters, and in that way, you temporarily suspend your disbelief and become them. Video games have an immediate personal element that other media can only dream of achieving. So when a particularly monumental video game emerges, it leaves with it a wake of powerful memories in its audience that will resonate with them for years, and if it's truly special, for the rest of their lives. Today, I would like to indulge you in one such experience, and slowly dissect a masterpiece. Join me as we begin our treacherous journey through the hostile alien planet Zebes, becoming the stoic space bounty hunter Samus Aran on a self-instilled, hopeless mission of honor and integrity. We will be diving in head first, deeply exploring the narrative, analyzing its gameplay design philosophy, as well as the immersive soundtrack and its coalesced effect on the human psyche. We will be exploring the entire game from beginning to end, so feel free to play alongside me as we explore the game area by area. Regardless of whether you have already had the luxury of experiencing this particular event firsthand, or haven't yet had the opportunity but still wish to share in it all the same, welcome. Strap in and count yourself lucky, because you're in for something truly special. So together, let's blow the dust off this old Super Nintendo cartridge, boot up this 3 megabyte masterpiece, and press start. I'm HamsterBomb, and this is the Super Metroid experience.
Chapter 1. Honor Amidst Horror.
From the darkness, we cut back and forth between red title cards and a moody, morbid scene. The unsettling music hits us in waves like a slow siren in the distance muffled through a rainstorm. Our vision is obscured through the cuts, but we slowly reveal a mysterious, horrific scene inside a dark scientific research center surrounding a large cylindrical tank lit only by the abandoned screens and misty fog. We pan over the body of a researcher laying on the floor. Revealing the full picture, multiple scientist corpses are surrounding this isolated tank, in which floats the only source of life in the entire scene, a single abandoned larva of an alien species known as a Metroid, fruitlessly crying out for help with its shrill alien chirp. At this point, the moody music has become a dark and booming rendition of the main theme as we gaze upon this quiet, mysterious opening shot. This was a startling opening to a Nintendo game in 1994, where dark themes like death were shied away from or just completely ignored. Mario stomps on enemies and they vanish. Link cuts them with his sword and they poof away. But Super Metroid out of the gate just presented us with 3 dead human bodies and no clear answer as to what happened. Curiously, the title cards referred to this game not as Super Metroid as the main menu states, but as Metroid 3. Luckily enough, upon beginning the game and leaving this title screen behind us, we are quickly caught up to speed on the story thus far. The very first thing we hear upon loading a fresh save file, however, would have certainly shocked anyone playing this on the Super Nintendo in 1994.
The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.
actual voice recording playing on a 16-bit home video game console. And not only that, it's surprisingly clear. This is extremely rare to hear on such an old system, much less anywhere near this quality. Regardless of the technical marvel, what was actually said should be especially concerning to us, as we know fully well that the two statements we were just told were lies. The last Metroid is indeed in captivity, however it is also in immediate unknown danger as its captors all lay deceased around it, making the next statement, the galaxy is at peace, intentional subversion of what we already know is coming. This is a great example of Alfred Hitchcock's metaphor for suspense, where the audience is aware of a bomb placed under a table as two unsuspecting characters chat while seated above it. We know that something terrible is amiss, and yet the game itself literally just spoke to us stating the opposite. This suspense is carried with us into the next scene, where we begin to receive context for the past two Metroid games. Luckily, the following narration by Samus directly is straightforward enough to simplify everything we need to know, and was voiced for us by the talented Rujual.
I first battled the Metroids on planet Zebes. It was there that I foiled the plans of the space pirate leader Mother Brain to use the creatures to attack the galactic civilization.
During this narration, we see a close-up of Samus's helmet, even seeing her face through her visor enough to see her blinking. We are also treated to a triumphant melody that will define the character from this point on, the theme of Samus Aran. Once the dialogue concludes, quickly recapping her adventure on Metroid 1 for the NES, we watch a short sepia-tone recreated clip depicting Samus defeating Mother Brain in the graphical style of the Super Nintendo. Samus fires missiles at the globular brain matter floating in a cracked glass container while dodging Rinkas, flying donut-shaped enemies. It's unclear if the Rinkas are organic or simply projectiles utilized by the Mother Brain's defense mechanisms. Regardless, this memory in particular will be important later.
I next fought the Metroids on their homeworld, SR-388. I completely eradicated them, except for a larva, which after hatching followed me like a confused child.
Now let's not sell it short, Samus. In Metroid 2 for the Game Boy, we were directly tasked by the Galactic Federation with committing mass genocide, completely eradicating the dangerous alien species known as Metroids. These creatures are virtually indestructible, unless first exposed to freezing temperatures, but left to their own devices will latch onto the heads of their prey, absorbing every last drop of energy from them until nothing but dust remains. It was in Metroid 1 that we experienced what it was like when a powerful space pirate force took advantage of this species as a bioweapon, and it was in Metroid 2 that they were determined to be too dire of a threat to all life to be allowed to propagate naturally. So Samus landed on their home planet and obliterated every last one of them. This would be a difficult enough mission to physically accomplish, but what about psychologically? The Metroids themselves did nothing wrong, and yet Samus had to coldly hunt the entire species to extinction. To make matters even more personal, the Metroids were biologically engineered by Samus's adoptive family, the believed to be extinct bird-like alien race the Chozo. Though the Chozo created the Metroids with the intent of eradicating an even greater threat to the galaxy, their impact on Samus emotionally must have been immense. In another cutscene, we see the cracks form in her psyche after defeating the Metroid Queen. Samus had completed her harsh mission and was on her way back to report her success when the only surviving Metroid egg laid by the Queen cracked open in front of her. Her instincts told her to kill it without hesitation, and yet she hesitated anyway. Something changed in her during this journey, and she couldn't bring herself to put down this helpless infant, especially after its peculiar affection towards her, possibly mistaking Samus for its own mother, whom she had just slain moments beforehand. This scene is also recreated in sepia-tone modernized graphics, as understanding this peculiar relationship is integral to what is about to happen.
I personally delivered it to the Galactic Research Station at Ceres, so scientists could study its energy-producing qualities.
And as we already know, something went horribly wrong after she left, but this does explain that the larva Metroid from the title screen was indeed the very same one Samus saved from planet SR-388, the last of its kind.
The scientists' findings were astounding. They discovered that the powers of the Metroid might be harnessed for the good of civilization.
Or at least that's what they told her. We will discover their true intentions in Metroid 4, but that's a story for another time.
Satisfied that all was well, I left the station to seek a new bounty to hunt. but I had hardly gone beyond the asteroid belt when I picked up a distress signal. Sarah Station was under attack.
Now, I don't know about you, but I found something quite troubling in that line. Not that Sarah Station was under attack, as we've already seen that coming. It's the fact that she describes her location as going past the asteroid belt, as if she's somehow still within our known solar system. It's probably just a relic of early 90s sci-fi writing, using something as unambitious as landmarks so spatially close to Earth that we as the audience would recognize it. But it's also not like our solar system has a patent on asteroid belts. It's odd, however, that she refers to it as the asteroid belt. Maybe the Galactic Federation homeworld really is Earth, and Samus was simply passing by them on her way. Odd phrasing, but nonetheless, she doubles backward and zooms toward the space colony with some impressive parallaxing effects selling the three-dimensional vacuum of space. Finally, in gameplay, we descend from an elevator and are given free control of Samus in a tall mechanical shaft of some sort, with platforms for us to use to jump down to the only door on the bottom right. Ignoring the fact that there would be practically no way for the researchers who work on this space colony to ascend the shaft themselves without any stairs, let's take control of Samus and get acquainted with our protagonist. Samus is very floaty, as if jumping in a low-gravity environment. Technically, gravity should be different on this space station compared to the planet below that we will be spending the rest of the game exploring, but it's understandable from a game development perspective that they remain consistent. Unique gravity effects per environment is asking a little much. Back to Samus, she has a much wider range of aiming than in previous games. She can fire her power beam in 8 directions, utilizing the shoulder buttons to aim at an angle. And unlike the majority of other games at the time, when she turns, she gets new sprite art making sure that her arm cannon doesn't flip to the wrong side of her body. Maybe it's this welcome attention to detail that makes me yearn for slightly heavier gravity aboard the Ceres colony. Looks like we can also crouch for the first time, making those low-to-the-ground enemies of old feel much less threatening. Anyway, we descend the shaft and reach the solitary door at the bottom, which, unlike nearly all other doors in the game, these space colony doors open automatically when approaching them. The next room is also empty, but features a large protruding empty platform, possibly for a missing escape vessel of some sort. Strangely enough, the parallaxing space station backdrop is asymmetrical. Between each cylindrical instrument on the wall is a diamond-shaped object, all except for one off-center position, likely from damage. This curious addition makes the whole room feel moody and unbalanced if the quiet humming and wobbling atmospheric noises didn't already put you on edge. The next room opens into a stairwell, or rather half of one. Possibly due to limitations of the hardware, the stairs go from left to right, leaving us to drop down to the next level, meaning that these poor researchers would have to be jumping up from one level to the next, even though there are actual stairs in this room. Sorry to dwell on it, but come on, working here must have been the worst. Space OSHA would never say this place was up to code. Anyway, we can see behind some fencing that the same backdrop from the last room is carried over here, and as we drop down, it barely scrolls with us, implying that this station is massive. And finally, we enter the next room on the right, the very same room from the main menu. Only one thing is different. The large center glass tank the dead bodies surround is smashed open, and the last Metroid is missing. The unceremonious discovery of this important scene is tense and ominous, with the station's cold, unending humming. Samus ignores the bodies, knowing the ramifications of what might be taking place, and hurries to the next room, a long horizontal shaft, opening out into a large clearing. The room is a dead end, but luckily enough, the only thing we see inside is the unharmed baby Metroid safely stored inside a small portable glass container. It begins to cry out to us in its shrill chirping manner, but as we approach it, through the dark blue mist, we see something glowing in the shape of an eye, and out of the shadows, Ridley appears. He clutches the Metroid's tank and roars. Up to this point, Ridley was only fought once in the NES original game as a boss, not counting the Prime series that would release later but canonically fall before this point. This was the moment that the purple space dragon went from being one of the 2 original bosses from the first game to becoming an ongoing antagonist for Samus. The music shifts shifts into the boss battle theme, which will later be known as Ridley's theme, even though many bosses in this game will also share it. Ridley flies into the air and begins his assault. He only has 2 moves in this encounter, acting more as a tutorial for combat than an actual boss fight. Ridley can fly into Samus and skewer her with his tail, or catch her with his exploding fire breath. Now, even though Samus is only equipped with her power beam and basic suit, she's more than capable of putting up a fight. Or, well, she can choose to. Truth be told, you can't actually die in this encounter, as Ridley will flee the scene whether you or he has taken too much damage. Ridley slowly turns red as his damage builds up, making his actual health pool an estimation at best, whereas your health is clearly spelled out on the top screen alongside your other suit functions. Once one of the 2 of you is close to defeat, Ridley will fly up and from the distance zoom towards the foreground with the Metroid larva in hand. After his escape, we get an emergency message written across the screen. Self-destruct sequence activated. Evacuate colony immediately. If only the Super Nintendo were just a bit more powerful, we'd probably be hearing this instead of reading it, as will be done later in Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance. Regardless, a 1-minute timer appears on screen and we have only one direction we can go: backwards. This is teaching players from the very beginning that sometimes to progress forward, you need to turn around. And what we stumble upon heading back through the same dark, cold hallways again is a completely different chaotic scene, contrasting the very same opening we just experienced. Not because of the timer, but because the entire station is falling apart. Blasts of smoke and steam fire out randomly from various points on the floor and stairwells. There is a bright red haze changing the atmosphere of the colony, almost assuredly lit by warning lights, and the whole space colony is shaking as we run to escape, which is a good time for players to discover that we even have a dedicated run button this time. Samus must race past the discarded bodies of the researchers, climb the stairwell, and dodge puffs of exploding debris as she ascends back to the elevator where we first made our descent. The final climb is the tough part, as you can easily be knocked down for jumping at the wrong time, and the camera's perspective of the room tips and shifts as Samus approaches the top, visualizing the instability of this doomed vessel. As soon as you touch the elevator platform, we cut to see the entire space colony from afar, exploding in many small bursts before finally detonating in one huge blast. And right at that moment, Samus flies towards the screen aboard her ship. It was a close call, but we made it out alive. Unfortunately, there were no other survivors. Even if they survived the initial attack, no other ships managed to escape the devastation. From space, we see an orange planet, Planet Zebes. This was once Samus's home. After space pirates killed her family, she was taken in and raised by the Chozo, who trained her to be a warrior and gifted her with the power suit that she currently wears. Aside from protecting her from the vacuum of space, it can also seamlessly integrate any Chozo technology or new weaponry upon discovering them. Ridley was part of that initial attack that ended the lives of Samus's parents, and was also involved in the uprising that would later take place on Zebes in Metroid 1. Now, forced to return to this fated planet, chasing down the cruel tormentor who has thrown Samus's life into turmoil, she disembarks through the atmosphere and lands once again on Planet Zebes. And that is the conclusion of Chapter 1 of 8 of the Super Metroid experience. I am hard at work on the other parts. They will be coming soon. I am not going to set any particular dates for them to come up. I want to make sure that they are well produced. Please be patient with me as I work very hard on these. I want to make sure this is done very well. Whether or not I get to continue with other games outside of Super Metroid once I'm done, I would very much like to. I'd also like to hear your feedback, what you guys think about these. And definitely remember to give some positive comments to Rujual for joining us, giving a wonderful voice rendition to Samus. One more thing I would like to mention, I did technically skip over something that could have been covered in this episode, and that is if you let the main menu play out, it will play a bit of an attract mode video, and though it showcases some really cool techniques that you can do in the game, I think it's best that we cover them when we actually get to those power-ups themselves, and not right now as we overload the introduction of this game. I have no idea how long the other parts may be, but I can tell you right now, it took us about 20 minutes just to land on planet Zebes, so it may be very wildly different in other parts, but we have a lot of ground to cover, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of this plays out, and hopefully you are as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Remember to like the videos and subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next part of the Super Metroid experience.